almost like if someone had to from so that people can learn from them, Gila would be the right person for it to happen to. 6.5 years ago, our life took a complete 360 as a result of the catastrophic consequence of losing our daughter, Gila, at the age of 18 to she said to me, well, I have a problem with baby. The vast majority of people who want to live. They want to live. That's just a fact. Put his arm on his shoulders and said, now you look as nice as you do every single day. And he told me, I decided not to kill myself. The only way that I know how to confront is by infusing and saving lives.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of LivingYosh. I'm very, very, very honored and privileged to have with me Rabbi Shalom Hammer. Rabbi Shalom Hammer is an motivational speaker. He's an author, and as you can see on his shirt, he started Gila's Way, which we're going to get into. Rabbi Shalom Hammer, thank you again for being on my show. Once again, it's such an honor. I look up to you so much and what you do for so many people. Is it possible you could tell me a little about yourself before we get into Gila's Way?
Sure. I love talking about myself. It's one of my favorite topics.
Makes two of us.
First of all, Yosh, thank you very much for hosting me. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
As inspired as you are in terms of what you say about me, ditto and right back at you. So, well done on what you're doing and the things that you're bringing to people. So I'm happy to be a part of this. Thank you very much. I also want to apologize to your listeners. Today is Shivasar B'Tammuz. It's a Jewish fast day. So I haven't drunk or eaten. I'm in Israel time. We're approaching 3:30 in the afternoon. It's hardcore time. So I apologize if my voice is not so clear. So I apologize for that. In any event, so my name is Shalom Hammer. I am a rabbi. Don't hold that against me. But we live in Israel now for 36 years. In 1990, my wife agreed to marry me, even though she might be second-guessing that many, many times over. But having said that, we got married in 1990, made Aliyah immediately. I'm originally from New York, but I'm educated in, I guess, Yeshiva University in that system. But I really felt very strongly that I should throw myself really full force into the Israeli world. And I did not want to exist within a Anglo-Saxon bubble. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, especially back then, Israel was a little different, the dynamics. And excuse me, it was very important for me to be able to be a part of Israeli society. So I served very, very, very basic training in the Israeli army. And I really looked to educate within the Israeli sector. So I taught in a place called Hadera for a number of years. I taught in Pardes Chana and also in Yerushalayim, but mostly in Israeli institutions. Israeli yeshiva high schools. And I still encourage people to go into Israeli education, into the Israeli sector, because they really do need good educators. And my Hebrew was pretty good. I learned in elementary school, Ivrit B'Ivrit, literally in Hebrew, all of our Limudei Kodesh, all of our Torah studies. So I was able to swim. And thank God, that was where I was involved with. Then I'd say over the past 10, 12 years, I started getting very involved in the education branch of the Israeli army. I felt it very, very important as a rabbi, pretty much one of the few normal rabbis here in Israel. I hope you'll edit that out, but whatever it is. But the point is that I felt that I could give over a Judaism that's not coercive. And in Israeli society, that's extremely important. There are many, many secular Israelis or non-observant Israelis who feel very put upon, whether it's correct or not, doesn't matter. If the feeling is there, it's something that needs to change. So I started an initiative which was called Makom Meshutaf, which is a unified place. I would go to kibbutzim and to moshavim all over Israel, predominantly secular ones, and disseminate talks and lectures and presentations about Judaism that's not coercive. So what binds us together? What does it mean to be extreme? What does it mean to engage in dialogue? What does it mean to be accepting of others, even if they look or act differently than you are? What does orthodoxy really want out of us, and so on and so forth. So these are topics that I would give over, that I would present, that we would engage in dialogue about. And then, and I was also lecturing a lot in the Israeli army and the IDF about these topics that had to do with Judaism and non-coercion and idealism and Zionism and so on and so forth. 6.5 years ago, our life took a complete 360 as a result of the catastrophic consequence of losing our daughter, Gila, who's the most beautiful child, at the age of 18 to suicide. And I've always been a proactivist, as you probably have gathered. And I've always been someone, whether it be positive or negative, and sometimes it doesn't serve me well, I've always been someone who has felt that he needs to fix things, to fix the world, to change the world, to impact the world. And my first initial reaction, literally after 3 days after sitting Shiva with my children, which I never dreamt I would ever do, I went out and started lecturing about mental health and
Amazing.
suicide prevention and suicide awareness, and telling Gila's story in her memory so that it would impact people, so that people would have a place to engage in dialogue and hear about these things that many people are afraid to touch. I was not. And that's what I started to do. And what happened, it evolved into this organization, Gila's Way, in her memory. So that's where I'm at today. That's what I'm, full throttle, full force involved in this initiative of presenting these issues.
Can I just throw in a question, and before we get a little more into Gila's way? So can
Sure.
you kind of, obviously someone who does a lot for Israel and is very connected with Israel. Growing up, what was your connection like to Israel, and how would you compare it to how people connect to Israel today? As far as with everything going on, and not that it wasn't rough things going on with Israel back in the day. Not to make it sound like you're old by saying back in the day, but what's the difference, or what
Yeah,
do you
that's
see
an
different?
excellent question. So I'm a little familiar with the platform, the scene of the United States, for example, because I come to visit, but I'm much more familiar with the Israeli scene. I spent the majority of my life here. Having said that, as a kid, we had an amazing principal, a Rabbi Michel, who was very, very strict, alav shalom, was an amazing person, but he really embedded inside of us the concept of Zionism, living in Israel, that Israel is our home. He was a Holocaust survivor. Um, and he also taught us all Limudei Kodesh, all of our Torah studies were Ivrit B'Ivrit, were in Hebrew, which I think is a rarity today. I
Oh, for
don't
sure,
think
yeah.
you find that.
You
There might
don't.
be one or two outstanding schools here and there that still do it in elementary school, certainly not in high school. And it served us very, very well. I mean, Israel was a large part of our curriculum. Today, I feel, and I could be wrong, but my feeling based on what I see in a periphery, okay, is that the American scene, the American Orthodox scene is more, I'd say moves more to the right, in terms of ultra orthodoxy, in terms of a comfort zone that doesn't really engage that much in terms of Zionism, in terms of the Israeli army, in terms of Hakamata Medina, establishing and promoting the state of Israel. Now, let me just qualify what I'm saying. That doesn't mean that I don't feel Jews in America are not supporting Israel. And it doesn't mean that they're not interested in Israel. And it doesn't mean that they're not in front of the news. But I just feel like the education, it has become uh, more bent towards the right, as opposed to progressive modernity, progressive modernism, progressive Judaism in terms of Israel and where the scene is and where it's moving and how we can accommodate, etc. And I think one of the reasons for that is, and it's really, it makes sense, is that the strong, ardent Zionists, okay, Zionist educators are making Aliyah. They move to Israel. That's just because that's what they're supposed to do. So it's preached to them, and they subscribe, and they drink the Kool-Aid, and eventually they just have to make Aliyah. You have to move to Israel because that's what you're learning the whole time, and that's what you're supposed to do. So I think that what happens is that a large element of education, even within what's called the modern Orthodox high schools, um, they're not so modern Orthodox. They're not so religious Zionist Orthodox, and the leaning is towards more of the right wing, and I guess you would call it black hat world. And I see that in general in many communities in the United States. I see it in schools. Not everyone, and there are outstanding institutions that do not. But that's my general feeling as a whole. And also, one other thing that's really important is that when you're in America, these issues of serving in the army, of paying taxes to your country, to Israel, whatever it is, they're not really hard pressed issues because they haven't become an issue, right? I mean, kids in the United States are not serving in the army. It's not an issue that they have to deal with. Whereas you look at the youngsters in Israel, and I always tell the Chayalim, I always tell soldiers when I speak in front of them, or pre-military academy youngsters, the adolescents, I always tell them this place is not normal, because in a normal world, someone who's 18 years old is not really thinking about going to combat. They're thinking about where they're going to get their next beer, or which youngster looks good at the bar, or which university am I applying for. And those issues are not as real as what these youngsters are dealing with. And so the issues really that are at hand in Israel are almost a non sequitur when it comes to the United States, because they're just not that boer, they're not that strong issue that are there, which is
I'm happy you
understandable.
said that because, and maybe you disagree, but especially saying how we don't have the mindset as children in Israel that, oh, we're going straight to the army, when we turn 18. So my feeling is that we need to do a better job in the schools in the United States to teach kids what it means to be a Jew. Not just teach them about the laws, about the language, about the history. How do you present yourself? What does it mean? How do you walk around every day as a Jew? How do you define being a Jew? I feel like sometimes we forget and we don't realize that in Israel, that's how people walk around every day. That's how people represent themselves. And I think we have to do a better job here. But what even for my own kids, it's scary nowadays. So how do you act as a Jew when you're scared to walk out as a Jew?
Yeah, I totally hear that. I mean, listen, I would just add a conduit to what you're saying. In my opinion, okay, one of the problems that you have in today's generation, today's youth, and by the way, there's a problem in Israel as well. There's a big problem in the Israeli youth as well, is a lack of creativity. In other words, there's so much pressure in terms of accomplishing tests, exams, university, moving on, or army, or bagrut here in Israel, that there's very little room for creativity. And in my opinion, and to quote one of my rabbis, Rabbi Natan Lopez Cardozo, if you don't have wonderment, curiosity, artistic development in religion, it's very hard for religion to grow, and it becomes stifled. And I think that a large part of our Judaism, we become very, very one-dimensional. And when you're one-dimensional, that's not interesting to youth, especially the youth of today.
Yeah.
So unless we think more 3D, and I'm not suggesting, ignoring and excusing halakha. I try to be halachic as well, but I do think we need to be creative, and we need to get our kids not just in terms of what does it mean to be a Jew, but what does it mean to be Jewish to you? How do you express yourself as a Jew?
I
What does
love
it mean
that.
to have a relationship with God to you? And I don't know if we explore those avenues enough in any parts of our Judaism, including the Haredi world, by the way, which dictates a large part of what needs to happen. And I'm not sure there's creative thinking, and that's a real, in my opinion, that becomes a real problem. As far as the United States and anti-Semitism, I'll tell you an amazing thing. Okay, I don't know if it's so amazing, but it's an interesting story.
Okay, please.
When I travel now, I do not wear a kippah and I do not wear my tzitzit out. So I wear a hat, I wear a cap. I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to get into trouble. I don't want any issues. And it's very, very frightening to say this, but it's a reality.
It is. Yeah.
So my wife and I, yeah. So my wife and I were in Los Angeles for Shavuot. I went there to speak. And then we traveled and we made our way back to Miami. And wherever I went, because we were flying back from Miami to Israel, wherever I went, I wore a hat. I didn't have any problems. Where did I encounter anti Semitism for the first time in two
Oh
weeks?
boy.
In the Miami airport,
Hey, you gotta be
okay,
kidding me.
I went into, they don't have an El Al lounge, but they have a lounge that allows El Al passengers in. And I go in there and I said to myself, you know what? I'm flying back to Israel. I'm going to wear my yarmulke, my kippah. I'm going to wear my tzitzit out. I have, what could be? Anyway, a lady in the lounge, she just does not stop staring at me. And she's just consistently, continuously staring at me. And, eventually I'm not the kind of guy that that lets down. Right. So I just looked at her and I said, I stared back at her. So she said, well, do you have a problem? So I said, yeah, I don't know why you keep staring at me. Is that, I'm married already. I'm not available. What exactly is the problem? So she said to me, well, I have a problem with baby killers.
Oh
That's what she
God.
says to me. And so the truth is, I was totally wrong. I handled it wrong. I'm saying this for the sake of your listeners.
Okay.
And I got angry at her. I should not have.
I
I
think
should
you've
have
got
said
mixed
to her,
reviews on how you handle it. So don't apologize or don't think you
no,
handled it
no,
wrong.
I really think, by the way, my children said to me that I handled it wrong, and I
Okay,
agree
so you
with them.
handled it wrong then. Okay.
I agree with them. Look, I mean, in the end of the day, why would she assume that I'm a baby? Even if she feels that Israelis or Israeli soldiers are baby killers, how does she know I'm Israeli? How does she know I live in Israel? How does she know that? I mean, I could be flying to Boston. I mean, why? Like it just was so ridiculous. Anyway, the point is that it is difficult. It's upsetting. It's disturbing. At the same time, it's a reality, and I do feel that's why that if our children are taught in terms of creative Judaism and asking themselves, like, what does it mean to me? Why is it important to me? Otherwise, they could just become very frightened, very scared, and they won't necessarily be proud or be able to wear their Judaism in whatever form or fashion that is, with pride. So I think it's very, very important for us to
But let me
emphasize that.
ask you this, and it's no disrespect to people who don't wear a kippah, do wear a kippah, but how do we pick and choose between amuna bitachon, where you know what we need to go out as who we are, and Hashem's going to protect us, and whatever is meant to be is meant to be.
I mean, listen, we can't, it says Shomer P'tayim Hashem. You can't be foolish and put yourself in danger and expect to be protected. God protects those who protect themselves, right? V'rapo yirape, right? We're expected to also heal ourselves. So I don't think we should do anything foolish, and we certainly don't have to flaunt things in people's faces. Having said that, I'm not saying we shouldn't go out with a kippah. I mean, maybe people feel okay with going out with a kippah, and that's absolutely fine. But I think we also have to be, wary, diligent, and aware of what's going on around us.
Look, I understand because growing up in California, there was a time where the rabbi in Los Angeles said to people, "You could carry $1 around the shul because if people rob you, at least you have something." So it's almost crazy. We need to have this conversation. I'm not just talking about me and you, but as a whole, as Jews, or it just we should just be able to go out in peace and be who we are. But it's gotten a little extreme, and it's very unfortunate. And I don't think there's a true answer. I mean, you have to be a judge yourself and decide, like you said, what's smart, what's the right thing to do, and what makes you feel good. And in the end, I think God has a plan no matter what. And but we have to be smart. We have to be smart. And we can
Yeah.
still represent ourselves as Jews either way, whether we wear a kippah or not. Because there's more
Yeah,
to it
no,
than just wearing a kippah.
I agree with that 100%. And but I also think we also have to. I mean, now I'm going to put on my Israeli hat, okay, as someone living in Israel. We also have to be aware of what's going on around us. Like, ultimately, if you are, or let's say, I consider myself or try to be an observant Jew, an Orthodox observant Jew. So, I mean, you read the Bible, you read the Torah, and you kind of understand that ultimately all of us belong in the land of Israel. The land of Israel is the Jewish land. The land of Israel is our home. It's been our home for over 3,500 years, yada, yada, yada. All the things that all of your listeners have heard already a million times over by people a lot more intelligent and more articulate than me. But, I think that I'll give you an example, Yoshi. You'll appreciate and enjoy this. Okay, when I was in New York, last November, and I was there lecturing. And I bumped into a couple of friends or had casual conversation. I said, it's quite frightening what's going on, in New York and around us. It's a little intimidating. And they would say to me, honest, quite a few of them would say to me, it's really not a concern. We own another place in Florida. So,
That's a concern for Floridians because they're all coming down here.
well, the price of your homes are going up, right? But I mean, it's
True.
just there. In the end of the day, you have to wake up and smell the coffee. I don't know how long you could just run and hide, and ultimately, God does want us here in Israel. I mean, that's what we
I
read every
guess
week.
it's kind of hard for me, and I'm not just saying me specifically, but because of what I
Yeah,
kind of went through, I'm not going to it. I really feel like Hashem saved me, which I know that sounds like, very vague, but like when you connect to Hashem in a way that you never have before, it's like Hashem has a plan, and I just need to show him that I got to make him proud. I'm not gonna go too much into that, but it's very tough because you don't want to feel like you're disappointing Hashem. You don't want to feel like you can't be yourself as a Jew, but I guess we still have to pick and choose. That's just the way it is. I mean,
yeah, I agree. But I will tell you, Yoshi, for whatever it's worth, and you don't have to agree with me, okay? I believe Hashem is, and I'm not an expert in Hashem, and I'm sure he doesn't feel that close to me, but I believe strongly that Hashem, if you're proud of yourself, that's generally a navigation towards Hashem being proud of you. So
I
I
like
think
that.
it really starts with ourselves. Look, God knows that we're human beings. God, He created us. So He knows us better than anyone. And He knows that we make mistakes. He knows that we sin. And He set us up for failure. Okay. But what He also set us up for was to choose whether we're going to have resilient spirit, how we're going to respond to that failure, how we're going to respond to the sins that we do. Does it mean something to us? Are we sincere? Are we trying? And I think ultimately that's what the whole concept of tshuva, which we're approaching swiftly, is all about. And I think that's what God expects from us. So when you ask yourself, what does God expect from me? I think you first have to ask yourself, what do I expect from myself?
Yeah,
And that will help me navigate towards what God expects from me as well.
I like that. That's I'm gonna take that to heart. Thank you. I want to now go into Gila's way, which is obviously started because you're unfortunately lost your daughter Gila. Is it possible you could tell me a little more and tell whoever's listening a little more about Gila growing up, as a child and the kind of person she was?
Are you kidding me? I could talk about Gila all day.
Eh,
This morning, by the way, I spoke to a therapist. She's a psychologist. She actually works in animal assisted psychotherapy. I never
I
heard of
love
it
that.
before. I mean, I've heard of like little increments about it, but I never really knew what it was. And thank God, she's a incredible woman. She lives up in Haifa, and she just got approval uh, to approve a master's degree, okay, an MA, master's degree here in Israel through a university to get a master's degree in this animal assisted therapy. It's incredible because kids will reveal things by interacting with animals. and it's just amazing.
I wanna let you
Uh,
know, when I was home on house arrest, I it was me
mm,
and my dog. My dog was my therapist.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
I'm a big supporter of that.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
sorry.
And I often tell people to buy a dog for their child if they're experiencing difficulty, if the kids loves animals, because
100%.
animals are not judgmental. They're friendly. By the way, I'm not a big dog guy. I myself am not, but I understand the thought process behind it. In any event, why am I telling you this? She told me that her brother died from suicide as well.
I'm sorry.
And one of the things that she said to me was, "I want you to know that you should always talk about, I would speak about my brother, and I respect that you speak about Gila." And I said to her, you need to understand, when I speak to people about bereavement and about grieving, what many people don't understand is they'll cross the street if they see someone like myself coming, because they don't know what to say, or they'll say, you know what, I better not mention Gila because I don't want to bring it up in his mind. That'll make him depressed. I mean, really, do you think that a father or that's a loved one is capable of removing someone like that from their mind? No, just the opposite. I
Yeah,
explain to people that when you speak about someone who died, you are actually confirming that they're still alive. So
yeah.
I can speak about Gila all the time, and that's really my lectures and everything that I give over is really that's a large part is about that, is about keeping Gila alive. So Gila was an incredible child. Um, she's actually just the opposite of someone that you would think suffering from mental health and depressed and internal and struggling. No, she really wasn't like that. She was extremely rambunctious, vivacious, adventurous. She was always pulling pranks. She was hilarious. She had a face that looked like a cartoon character, right? Big nose that you could tweak, cheeks that were rosy and pinchable and delicious. She was larger than life. She was very charismatic, dynamic, and she was the leader of her peers, not necessarily academically, but just friendly wise. I mean, everybody loved being around her, and she was the kind of person, if you met her, you didn't forget her. So I always say to people, Gila Kishma Kain He, that her name personified who she was. Gila means simcha, happiness, and that's who she was. And Gila also means legalot yah, to reveal the divinity of God. She was a deeply spiritual person, very interested and concerned about her relationship with God. And so the when I say that, it makes the story, the tragedy, even more difficult to grapple with, because how can a child who was so embracing of life and so vivacious, how could it be that this would be her end? And that's a large part of what I explained. So in a very strange way, and I'm going to say something very raw to you, Yoshi, um, in a very strange way, it's almost like if someone had to die from suicide so that people can learn from them, Gila would be a Gila would be the right person for it to happen to. Because if I can stand in front of people and say, look, Chevra, you need to understand suicide happened to the Hammer family. Hammer family, outstanding citizens, upstanding individuals involved, nothing really major traumatic inside their family. And yet, this was the trauma that shook our family and many other people as well. And it happened. And it happened to a girl who was, as such, Gila. So it's almost, I don't want to use the word poster child, but it's strangely would be a good example for people to learn from, that it could happen anywhere.
I love you said that because and that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I feel like a story has so much meaning, and the effect somebody could have with their story on other people it's so important. And sometimes people, I'm not saying they have to do it the way I'm doing it. I'm not saying they have to do it the way you're doing it as far as sharing their story, but even sharing with one or two people and letting them know that you could get something out of the journey is so important, because you don't have to give up. You don't have to feel like it's a wasted event. I mean, it has so much strength. I wanted to ask you, because I have a daughter, and she's a teenager now. What
What's her
was your
name?
relate?
Are you allowed
I'm
to say her
sorry.
name?
Yeah, yeah,
Are you allowed to say her
Ariella.
name? What's
Yeah,
that?
Ariella.
Ariella. Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she's my princess.
Fantastic.
It's a little tough because of what I went through. It was a little tough to keep the relationship going and keeping it strong.
Sure.
But what was your relationship like with Gila in the 12 to 14 range? Because I'm kind of getting trying to get advice here. If you see what I'm getting at.
um, Look, look, it's very interesting. First of all, most 12 to 14-year-olds, I don't know how interested they are in having a deep, uh,
They're not.
resonating relationship with their parent. Certainly, a girl would be more prone, I think, to have more with their mom than with their dad. Um, but I don't know how much anyway. They're more concerned with their peers and their friends and their social infrastructure. But it's interesting because Gila was so extrovert, okay, when it came to like her behaviors. Like she didn't hold back.
That
She
sounds
also,
familiar.
and this, yeah, I mean, this also calculated, by the way, into her suicidality, is that she was impulsive. She was also impulsive. She was never diagnosed, and I wouldn't say that she was hyperactive, but she was very active. So she would just like in the morning, if it was the summertime, she'd wake up in the morning, call one or two of her friends, say "Yalla, chaverim, yeah, let's go." She had this raspy voice, and they would just go to jump into a mayan, into a spring in the middle of the desert. They would. That's the kind of person that she was. Having said that, when it came to her own personal conversations, and I'm the kind of guy who likes to have deep personal one-on-ones. I try to do it
Same.
with all my kids. Some of them don't like it, but
Same.
Gila was the least prone to that. So she was the least prone to sitting and talking about her feelings and sharing and spilling her insides. It wasn't her. So while she was a very extrovert personality, when it came to personal things, she didn't really share that much. But having said that, and I'll just say this to you, you asked for advice. I don't like giving advice because parenting is the hardest job in the world.
Yeah,
But
you're telling me.
it's the only thing Rabbi Wein used to say to us. Parenting is the only thing in the world that you don't need a license for, and it's the most difficult job to encounter. And but what I will say is, what I think in the end of the day is the most important thing for our kids to see and to learn is that we are open to communicate with them whenever they want about anything. That is like stage one. And I have to tell you, I don't have to tell you, I want to tell you that when Gila died, um, I meet families who have experienced suicide in the family and no one talks about anything. And one of the blessings that we have with my kids, four of our kids are married. We have Kanahara, an eighth grandchild on the way. Okay. So I'm talking about like Kanahara, like a fairly large, expansive family. All of them, including our grandchildren, like to communicate with each other. So
Right.
we don't all necessarily like to have a one-on-one, but everyone knows if they need or want to talk about anything, they can at the Shabbat table, anywhere. And that I think is very, very important and crucial in any family, and helps. I think, God
I
forbid,
like
if you
that.
go through those dark days.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree. I mean, your kids have to feel comfortable with you. They have to feel like they could talk to you about anything and everything, even stuff where you're just like, "Why are you asking me? You should ask your mother." But I totally agree.
Right.
So, Rabbi, now that you've started this organization and everything for Gila, I'm sure you have a lot of people that come up to you and they ask you, "So, what are warning signs? How do I know? How do I be prepared? What do I do?" I could ask you in every way possible. What do you say to them as far as you gave great advice about letting your kids be open, but I'm sure you have people saying, "Oh, I'm a little worried about my child. I don't know, they're acting a little, off or this." What do you say to them? I mean, you can't prepare for this all. You can't just say, "Oh, throw them into a therapist." make sure they get, give them every, medication there is. I mean, what do you say to them?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't say that. What you just said at the end, that
No, yeah.
medication there, that we got to be careful of. But I will tell you, so it's interesting you say that. Look, I mean, we do have we started, or I started, when I started Gila's Way, I started a consultation service. And it wasn't for the person who's struggling, it's for the family, right? So, or the colleague or the friend or family or spouse, cousin, whoever it might be, that wants to reach out about someone they love who's suffering and they don't know how to help them. So this is a free consultation service that we offer. It's incredible because it started just with me. And then I realized this, I'm getting inundated, and I wasn't advertising at all. I mean, this was just through word of mouth. I was getting calls from the United Kingdom, from South Africa, Australia. We just had one from Brazil. Okay, I mean, it's like, and so what happened is that I realized that we have to, as Gila's Way was growing, I said we have to expand this, and it can't just be me. We have currently 5 consultants, okay, who are all MAs. They all have at least the level of an MA in social work or psychology, and they are our consultants. I still do some of the consultations when they can't, but rarely actually. They take the large load of it, and we get these questions all the time. So one of the things that I do is, in my seminars and presentations and lectures, I explain to them, look, what people need to understand is that someone who's dealing with a mental health issue, they have a different language. So they do not communicate. They communicate with us, but not in the same communication that we have. Right. So they want to engage in a normal dialogue, in a normal conversation like we're having right now, but they will say things to you in a very different way. What does that mean? So, for example, an adolescent. An adolescent, and generally, 16 to 24 is a hard age. It's an age that rises in suicidality and suicide thoughts every single year. In that age, they have a very, very hard time communicating. So they will transmit signals in different ways. And what they're saying is, like, for example, when they're no longer showering, when they're no longer sleeping, when they're sleeping too much, when they're with their phone the whole time as opposed to talking to anybody, when they're in the room and they shut the lights and it's dark even though they're awake, when they are late to school all the time, when they're no longer doing their homework, when they're no longer helping with chores around the house, when they're no longer choosing to come to dinner with the family or to speak to their parents or to speak to their siblings, when they're no longer engaging socially with their friends, or no longer doing sports that they used to like to do, and no longer looking after themselves physically. All of these things is talking. And what they're saying is, I'm in trouble. I need help. Look at me. They will not stand on a chair and say, I am depressed. I am suffering from depression. I am now having suicidal thoughts. No one's going to do that. First of all, they know very well that even though it might not or should not necessarily be, it is a taboo for them to speak about these things. Okay. Forget about, let alone the religious community and etc. All these things that, the factors that vary in, but they know. So what they will do inevitably is transmit these signals. And what they're saying to the person that they love is, I can't say to you that I'm depressed and that I'm suicidal, but I can say to you, look at me. I'm experiencing difficulties. I'm forgetting how to live. I'm forgetting how to live healthily. And
Geez,
that's
if this
huge.
doesn't make you want to go hug your kids right now, I don't know what that's it's really
Oh,
it's really,
of course it does, but they might not necessarily want that.
yeah.
But what they do want, and here's the kunz, okay, because this is very, very important. Why people will say to me, okay, but why would they be responsive to that? Why? What? And the answer is, and this is something that everyone needs to know: the vast majority of people who die from suicide want to live. They want to live, and that's just a fact. Our embracing of the greatest quality that we have, which is life, that goes for other religions as well, or other walks of life, okay, is very, very powerful. Our resilient spirit is very powerful. Yoshi, I don't need to tell you. I don't know your whole story. I don't want to know, and I don't need to know. I actually do want to know, but I don't need to know. And if you share it, I will listen. Okay. But I know that you've gone through struggles. I know that you've had a major ordeal in your life. Okay. And that you've had to reconstruct yourself. And you are. That resilience is very powerful. It's what
Thank
enables
you.
you to give a podcast today. And most people, the vast majority of people, have that resilience and they want to live. The problem is that you get a youngster who's sitting in their room and you say, "Hey, let's go for a walk. Hey, let's get a dog. Hey, let's go for therapy. Hey, let's go to the gym." They don't want to. They have no power, no energy to do anything. That's where the struggle begins. But we need to remind ourselves that they really want to live. They just have forgotten how or why. And we need to figure out what is that piece of the puzzle that will trigger and remind them again, oh, yeah, maybe it is worth another day, and that's where the art is.
Rabbi, let me ask you. You said after going into the shiva within 3 days, you wanted to go make a difference, and it's so amazing how strong you are. And I feel like it took me a while to get that strength based on what I went through. But what do you tell people who would have an unfortunate loss, and and they're having thoughts? So how do you support someone as a community? I mean, I thank God I had so much support. I mean, I had people calling me every day,
Yeah.
and that's what helped me. But I mean, I'm sure people are not that strong and they struggle in ways that we can't even imagine. I mean, so and some people want to be left alone, some people don't. I think being left alone is the worst thing. But so how do you tell community to support someone that's going through a loss, similar to what you went through?
So here's the story. First of all, you're right. I mean, and by the way, not that I was speaking about you behind your back, but I have heard from many people in Hollywood, Florida, where you live, that they have really been like so supportive of you, and that you've received that support, and you are truly blessed to be. And I know quite a few people in that community. You're very blessed to have that type of community. Not every community is like that. So you're very lucky, and you're also lucky, by the way, that that you got that support before all the New Yorkers come down to Florida, because you wouldn't get it anymore. I'm just kidding around, but so it's
Not totally, maybe
so,
a little bit, kind of, sort of.
but anyway, it is
Edit that
amazing.
out.
So what do you do? What do you do? Look, you said it yourself. The main causes of let's forget about mental illness. The main causes for mankind to struggle, okay, in anything, are loneliness and lack of purpose. Those are the two main things. In the end of the day, what man needs in this world is partnership, or companionship, I should say, companionship. And it doesn't matter how that translates. So sometimes it's a dog, all right? It could be a guy who's 20 is best friends with someone who's 85. It doesn't matter. We need companionship. We need to be interactive. We are social animals. That's number one. And the second is purpose. All of us, in the end of the day, want to make our mark in this world, want to have some kind of value. What do we give this world? We call it a
Yeah.
legacy, but it's not even as broad as a legacy. It could be, just a purpose. Purpose is so important. I say to the Chayalim, if I could get you out of the army and put you on an island in Hawaii, and a beautiful woman would be fanning you with fig leaves and just bring you whatever alcoholic drink you want for the rest of your life, but you are never allowed to leave the island. That's your whole life. You never allow. It's interesting because one or two of them at the beginning they'll say, "Oh yeah, yeah." Then most of them will say, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want that," because nobody really wants that. It's there's no purpose, and we want purpose. And the best thing that we can do to support those around us who are suffering or dealing or confronting, they don't always say, "Yeah, yes, I do want to." They'll say, "No, leave me alone." Often what they're really saying when they say leave me alone is, let's see if you'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah, I like that.
Let's see if you'll come back tomorrow. And you come back tomorrow, or you come back 3 days later and you say, hey, I'm still here. I didn't forget you. I get it. If you still tell me, reject me, no problem. But you should know I'm going to come back again. And that, I think, just demonstrating friendship, just asking after someone, hey, how's it going? I noticed that you're not around at Minyan in the shul in the synagogue often. Everything okay? Would you like to talk about it? We don't have to, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you if you'd like to. So it's those little remarks, if they're coming from a sincere place, which they usually are very powerful for people who are going through things.
Let me. I just want to ask you a question. Maybe it's because I'm a little biased based on
By the
once
way,
again.
I just
No,
want to
please,
add to that, Yoshi. I'm really sorry.
please. No, no,
You
don't be
know,
sorry.
and
Please.
I'm not belittling the chocolate baskets, from places like Oh Nuts and the flower arrangements. And I mean, I've seen them they're incredible, but sometimes they're not as effective as taking time, right? Because when you drop something off, you're dropping something off. When you're going to someone and saying, hey, I'm interested in, I
I
haven't seen
agree.
you around and I've noticed, are you okay? Would you like to talk? I mean, we don't have to, but that takes time. That's a sacrifice. It means
I love
something.
that, and I totally agree. And I guess 'cause I am a little biased, but I definitely, actions mean a lot. I wanted to ask you, and I guess don't take this as like this isn't your life commitment, but do you ever get overwhelmed with your commitment? Your message, and we're just days when I'm just like, wow, this is a lot. People always reaching out to me, and I'm sure sometimes it's you're 100% committed. Don't get me wrong, but is it ever overwhelming? Sending your message every day and sharing your story every day, even on here today. I'm sure times you're like, I've said this story a million times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to break it up into two questions because you mentioned something at the end. The first thing is it overwhelming? Of course it is. I mean, I do think of myself, and I don't know if this is correct, but I think of myself as superhuman. I am a little crazy, so I run on like Duracell batteries, and sometimes people will say to me like, "Do you ever sleep? Do you ever?" Yeah, I mean, I do sleep. I don't sleep very well. I just, and I do need times to break. I do need time, and I take them. I take them. It's interesting because I do physical exercise. I try to exercise. I go to an osteopath, and he said to me yesterday. He said, you're overusing. You got to let your body rest also. And I'm not so good at that. I'm very, very bad. It's a personality thing. I'm very, very bad at letting
I'm
things
very
go.
similar.
Yeah, I
I
mean, I don't know how to surrender, and that's not always good. By the way, I'm learning with my son, my oldest son, who's not a big learner, but when we get together, we learn something called Shara Bitachon, the gate of faith, and it's the famous one in Chovot Avot, a famous part of that book. And we learn it, and the reason why I learned is because a friend of mine who lost his daughter to suicide, said to me, you need to learn more how to surrender. And I suggest you read this. So I learned it with my son. I'm trying to learn how to surrender more. But it's hard for me, and it's okay. It's part of my personality. But yes, I do get overwhelmed at times. I take vacations with my wife. I find I'm writing a book, or I do something that's outside of the box. Like I just finished a drama theater chug. I would go once a week to this theater. It's not a chug. What do you call it? A club, theater club, and we would act. And we put on a play at the
love
end of the
that.
year. Of course, my wife got angry at me because what was my scene about? My scene was about losing a child, which was like whatever. Anyway, but the
Wow.
point is, I did feel like I was kind of like out of the box and with interesting people. So I do try to be creative and lose myself in other places just for the sake of my sanity. But my wife very often says to me, and here's important because in terms of grievers, my wife does not grieve like me. She does not react and does not, do the same things as me. And she often says to me, you are crazy. I mean, I could never do what you do. I don't know how you do it. And she does talk about Gila, but she doesn't do what I do. And that's okay. So I do need a break, and I do need to unwind at times. And and my family and my grandchildren are a very, very large part of that. That's where I find, my unwinding, so to speak. But then you also mentioned about, regurgitating. In other words, going over this story over and over again. It must get to, I don't know. It's interesting, I think because I get so excited and interested and concerned about, I don't mean this to be righteous, but just to help people, and that they should never, God forbid, chas v'shalom, ever experience what we experienced. I kind of feel like every podcast is new, and every time I give the similar lecture, it's a new experience, and I approach it that way, and I think it comes over that way. I don't know. It never goes dry. I think something that's alive in you, something that's a mission in you, something that we just said a moment ago gives you purpose, doesn't go dry.
And I love how you said like that about purpose, because I think that sometimes it takes us sometimes a lifetime to find our purpose. But once we do, like you said, which I just started sharing my story, and I feel like it is my purpose to give people strength just like you. But once you feel like you have that purpose and that and that drive, and you're helping other people, you don't get worn down because you're always helping somebody new, and it gives you strength. And I hope that I could keep up my level of helping people the way you do, because it's such a bracha. Every person you're making a difference on is amazing. It's what we need.
100%. I think so. And look, we don't save the world, and I can't save the world, and there are people who I can't save, and I can't help, and you have to also recognize that your limitations. But I'll just give you an example. Just and I think that you will. By the way, I really have confidence that you will continue, and you will grow with your strength, and you will define your mission more and more as you go
Thank you.
on. Okay, because you're driven that way, and you've come from where what you've experienced, and you're building it and reconstructing. So it's amazing. But I'll tell you something that happened to me 2 days ago. Okay, I was driving to the Jordan Valley to speak in a pre-military academy, and on the way, a young man called me, and he said to me, he said, "You came to our pre-military academy about whatever half a year ago, and you gave over a whole seminar, and all of us were very attentive." And he said, "I want you to know I needed to speak with you. And yesterday, or a few days ago, whatever, my mother attempted suicide, and I don't know what to do, but I knew who to call, and I knew what I needed to hear because you were at our
Wow.
institution, because you spoke to us. And so here I am. What do I do now? How do I get help? How do I, because he's pretty much on his own. And I said to myself, look, I feel terrible for him. And I did sit with him for about an hour and a half on the phone during my whole drive that was spent speaking with him and going through everything. But I said, what a blessing that Gila's Way was available to give, because who knows? Months ago, we gave over the seminar, and because of that seminar, this guy remembered and knew where an option is to turn to, even if I direct him to turn to other places. But at least he knew where to start for the sake of getting help.
It's amazing. I love that. I mean, making a difference on someone with, especially when we could say this multiple times with your story. There's no other thing that feels better than the difference you can make on somebody. Especially going through something like you went through. It's like I said, a blessing that you have so much strength, and people know where to go for that help. And that goes into. Can you tell us a little bit about Gila's Way? And obviously, we already know it makes such a difference in people's lives, but maybe tell us a little more about the organization, and um, how people could reach out to you. Even I want to hear more. So please share if you can.
Sure, sure. So so we just actually came out with another new website. It's actually quite extensive. It's very good, thanks to our amazing staff who are on Gila's Way. They're amazing people, and they do fantastic work, and they inspire me. But I will say that there are three areas that we focus on. Okay, the first is education. So I go out, disseminate. We have all types of lectures. So I have presentations in which I speak about the meaning of life, finding value in life. There are more practical presentations like from concern to conversation, navigating my child's mental health struggles. What do you do with a child? How do you speak to a child? Who do you turn to? What is safe? What is not safe? Medications, etc. All these different things that people are very confused about. Okay, so there's many different presentations. Education is one of our focuses, largely in the Israeli army and the IDF. Now I deal a lot with training or preparing officers to identify what's going on with their soldiers so that we prevent suicide. So that's preventative. Excuse me. The second thing is we have the consultation service, which I mentioned. That's a free service that we offer everyone. And now we advertise it. We open like floodgates.
Oh,
So
wow.
now we're advertising for it in Israel and Israeli channels. And we are averaging now over 15 consultations a week. So it's
Amazing.
just a huge amount. And that's not for the person who's suffering, but for the families to help navigate that person to the right place. And we have our own drive of therapists that we recommend, psychologists, psychiatrists who we don't recommend, who we do recommend, institutions, where they should go, how they should go, who they should talk to, when they should talk to, etc. So that's the second thing. The third thing is what's called suicide treatment. Now, this is something, excuse me, that we brought from the United States. It's a system called CAMS, C-A-M-S. And it was started by a Dr. David Jobs, who said that we don't necessarily need to medicate and hospitalize everyone who is suicidal. We can treat them. And he came up with a treatment method. And there are other methods around the world as well, by the way. But what people are realizing is hospitalization and medication is not only is it not necessarily effective, but it can often be detrimental. And so what do we give them? So what you could do is effective treatment, where CAMS says that within 8 to 10 sessions, the therapist who's trained in CAMS can sit with the person and talk them through and get them to lower their suicidality, if not rid themselves of it for the time, and then get help with follow-through therapy. And we brought the system to Israel. And we are in the process of training therapists. Not me, I don't do it. It's a Dr. Ashra Siegelman who is trained to do it. He gives over the training sessions to therapists so that they will implement more CAMS treatment in Israel as opposed to hospitalizing and medicating, which is not always effective. So we've done this now in 4 clinics in Israel. It's fantastic. We are trying to ensure that our clinicians who have gone through the training will use and implement CAMS, and that's our large focus. We're about to offer CAMS, first time ever, to IDF psychiatrists who are on Miluim, reservists, reserve IDF psychiatrists, to get this training, which is incredible. And we're getting there slowly but surely. So those
Can
are
I
the
ask you,
3
sorry.
things.
Ask you
No,
a
go ahead.
question, Rabbi. So, if anyone sees possibly any of the red flags you mentioned, not coming to the table, always being on their phone, not want to socialize with whatever it is, what would you recommend they do, right away? And it might not even be a concern, might even not even be anything bad, God forbid. But what does somebody do if they're like, I'm especially even after watching this, what would you recommend someone do?
Right. So the 2 things that they need to do first is, first they need to identify who has the capacity within the family or within the infrastructure to have the most effective conversation with that person. Then you take that person, if they're capable of doing it, and if they're old enough or if they're willing, and usually it's a parent, and they take the person out, try and take the person out of their environment, meaning find a neutral place. See, for an adolescent or a kid in their home, the home is a threatening place. Not always, but it could be, right? So or it's a domineering place. So if my parent is talking to me in the kitchen is not a place where I could be neutral. The kitchen is a place where my parent controls. And you want to get them to a neutral place, a place where they feel comfortable, maybe to converse, maybe to share. So maybe take a walk for the park, or go to an ice cream parlor, or a place away from the away from the Jewish community where, other Jews don't see you talking to your
Yeah.
child. Hey, what's going on here? You don't want that. You want to find a place that's really neutral, where they're saying, hey, I'm taking you here because I want to talk to you neutrally. I want you to feel comfortable to talk with me. And I'm not judging you. No judgment. I'm just here to listen. Listening is very, very effective, the most important thing. So the first thing you need to do is to try and approach that person in a non-threatening way, with validation, which means I don't understand what you're going through, but I understand that you're going through something and I recognize it. So I'd like you, and then empathy. Would you like to share this with me? I'm here to listen. And then really listening, eye contact, not looking at our phone, not making faces, judgmental faces, like how could that be,
Yeah.
or those kind of things. Those will destroy the communication. So just to be as positive, non-judgmental, and validate their feelings. That's where it starts. What happens if the child is not responsive, or the person or the colleague or the spouse does not want to leave the room and says leave me alone, and they're cloistered and holed up in a place for a long, then already you have to seek professional advice. What can I do? How can I get this person going? And then it gets a little more involved as we move
I
on. But the
love that.
main thing at the beginning is really showing effective communication, non-judgmental statements, and just empathy that I'm here for you.
I love that. I think everyone should take that to heart. I mean, if you see any type of warning, or either way, you have to show your kids that, like you said earlier, that they could talk to you and they could trust you, and maybe you have to give them a little extra love sometimes so they feel that way. I want to get into, you have a fund for Gila. Can you tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
Well, basically, we are a nonprofit organization. Okay. All our consultations, as I said, we do gratis. You should know, all of our work that we do in the Army, we do for free. So we don't, and I'm in the Army at least once a week, and I can drive all over the place to get to the Army. So, because I don't tell a base, you're too far, I can't, I'll go wherever they are. So it could translate into a full day, just to get to the Army and give over what we're giving, and then coming back, whatever it is. So all that right now is without any pay. We do generate funding. We do, when we go to communities, when we go to schools, we do charge for our programming. We try to keep the expense very low so that it's affordable for anyone. I will never have, I don't think I've ever had, and I hope I never do, a situation where a place will tell me, we just don't have enough funding. What could we do? I said, that's okay. What can you pay? I don't like to give things, when we're doing institutions and giving over. It shouldn't be for free, because everyone should feel a sense of obligation.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to feel like, I can't have this because I just can't afford it. No, no. And you should know that there are many times that people go for therapy and they can't afford it, and we will kick in. So we will give them some funding to help them to be able to afford the special treatment that they need for suicidality. So these are expenses. And so the large brunt, like every other good Jewish organization in the world, of existing, is fundraising. And I always say, what Chazal say, Dvarim hayotzim min halev nechnasim lalev. When you talk from the heart, it goes into other people's hearts, and they know it. They know what sincerity is. And no one, you can question a lot of things about me, but no one can question my sincerity. That's one thing.
No, no,
That's a ticket.
that's
That's a ticket that I have. So, and I think that resonates with people. So if people want to help out or give, there's no obligation, but it goes straight. By the way, we don't have a building. We don't have an office. We meet in my living room, all my staff. That's what we do. We don't want to have unnecessary expenses that don't need to be there. What our focus is on saving lives. And so when people give
yeah.
us financial help, that's where it goes to. It just goes to our work, to helping
Well, I'm
people.
gonna personally give a donation, and I highly recommend everyone give a little something, because especially now, and maybe I'm wrong, but with everything going on with the war in Israel, people need support from people like you more than ever. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a little more overwhelming as far as the cases you have to your people you're speaking to, and how often. I mean, it's very traumatic.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and there's no question. Every single person in Israel has gone through trauma. It's like that's hands down.
Only
It's almost
imagine.
impossible not to. Our son is on Miluim in Gaza. On and off the whole time. He lost a friend right next to him. Literally
Oh my
exploded
God.
like right next to him. So, and even if you don't take something as extreme as that, it's everyone's going through something. So I appreciate that, and our work is really inundated. And also, let's remember we talk about something called post trauma, right? So post trauma means what is yet to come. I always warn people and tell people here in Israel, we are unfortunately, I think, in for a tsunami, and there's going to be a lot of people that, if there already are, but a lot of people are going to be dealing with things that are going to surface as time moves on. So yeah, we do need a lot of that help. I also will say, Yoshi, that I do travel internationally to speak and to give over and present, and not only on these issues, on other issues as well in the Jewish world, but largely on these issues. And I'll be in November. I already have a trip booked to be in the tri-state, New York and Boston area. So if anyone out there can think of a venue or is interested in a venue, am I coming? Because what happens is when I speak in front of a crowd, they hear more, they learn more about who we are, they learn more for
Yeah.
themselves, they learn more about who we are, and that helps also to spread the word and spread funding
Well,
as
if you
well.
go to New
So
York, you have to come to Florida because that's the route everyone in New York takes.
yeah, Yoshi, I love coming to Florida, man. I love it there.
I'd love to have you again, and I'm going to speak to you after because I have a few friends in New York that I think would really appreciate you coming and speaking to their community.
That'd be
So
great.
I could
That'd be
obviously
great.
speak to you for hours. I feel like such a connection. I feel like we're, especially the fact that we both want to share our story. We both want to give people strength, which I highly recommend. That once again, everyone try to share their story to give at least if you could help one person. That's all that matters. I want to ask you, Rabbi, if you have one last message you could share with myself and the audience about the importance of being aware. Anything you want to share, it could be about it's all for you. This is your moment to share a little something, lasting impression for everyone, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. I think if I had to share one tidbit, it's something that I already mentioned. And to me, the most important thing is that in the end of the day that we remember the the greatest attribute that we can ever have is the attribute of life, and it's something that all of us absolutely do embrace, want to embrace, but some of us need to learn how to re-embrace. And life is just the most valuable thing. I mean, I say on my website, there's a quote from me on the website of Gila's Way. There's a quote from me which says, "The only way that I know how to confront death is by infusing and saving lives." And that's really what it's about. And the more that we appreciate and understand that, yeah, we put things into perspective. You say, you know what, this really stinks. This really stinks. This is really tough. I often tell soldiers, why is it that on Google, Israel is rated like the eighth happiest country in the world? I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, we do have a lot of, and by the way, the United States is not in the top 10. It's weird. I mean, we have terrorism and wars and struggles and financial difficulties, and and attacks, and the world is constantly over our shoulders. And the reason why is because there's a lot of purpose in this country. Even if we're forced into it, there's a lot of purpose. And in the end of the day, that's really what a person wants. They want purpose. So look around you, and if you see someone who just, might not necessarily look right, or is not showing up lately, or is a little more tardy in the last few weeks, it really is so important just to go over to them and say, hey, you know, I've noticed, and I'm here if you'd like to talk, because that can reignite and remind them again of the quality of life that they would like to have and they just forgot about. And I'll tell you a very, very quick scenario. About a year ago, a young man who is in yeshiva told me that he was ready to kill himself. And the morning that he prepared himself, that he's going to take his life, he went to the synagogue, to the yeshiva, to daven, to pray. Now, by the way, anyone who was preparing to kill themselves on that day and still goes to pray in the morning, that already says everything that we've said till now.
Yeah.
And while he's praying, his rabbi came in, and his rabbi saw that his shirt, the collar of his shirt, was a little crumpled, a little disheveled. And without saying a thing, the rabbi came over and fixed the collar of his shirt, put his arm on his shoulder, his hand on his shoulder, and said, "Now you look as nice as you do every single day." And he told me I decided not to kill myself
Oh my
because of that.
gosh. Wow. When I'm wiping my eyes, it actually is tears. It's so special, your stories and what you're doing. It really is. Like it makes, like I said, I think after this I'm just gonna go hug my kids because it's so much me. I'm so appreciative for what you do, and I'm so appreciative for the impact Gila has on so many people, and I'm so appreciative of your wife for letting you have time to come speak to me because I know you have
Are you
other
kidding me?
obligations.
She would tell me to stay for 4 hours if she could.
I would talk to you for 4 hours.
She
Rabbi,
doesn't
thank
even
you
notice
so
I'm
much.
gone.
Really, it means so much to me. And I once again, like the rabbi said, that if you feel someone struggling, just go up and ask how they're doing. That can make their day. That could possibly make the rest of their life. That could lead them towards a better path. I mean, we all need to be there for each other. Stop the hate. There's no room for it. Let's just
100%.
let's be
100%.
united more than ever, especially now. And Gila's way helps with that. And Rabbi, thank you so much for your mission, for being on Living Yosh, and I hope to see you in Florida soon. Um,
Me too. I hope to see you, Yosh, in Israel soon.
yes, I
Okay?
mean,
The
please
day will
pray. I,
come.
I want to be there so bad. My son's bar mitzvah is next year. I would love to have it in Israel, God willing, with Hashem's help.
Oh, wow. 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 Well, please let me know. I'll be there.
Yeah, it would
Okay?
be a great addition to my story. I really want to be
Absolutely.
there.
That'd be amazing. And thank you so much for hosting me. And Yosh, kudos to you. Stay
Thank
strong.
you.
Continue with your resilience and your mission. You're making it happen. And you're inspiring more people than you would imagine.
Thank you. And one more thing, Rao, if you wanna if we wanna follow you on for example Instagram, we want to be part of Gila's story. One, obviously, please donate to Gila's fund, but also, can you give us an example where how we follow the story? What where is it? The website? Is it Instagram?
You could, so we're on all of them. In other words, it's all Gila's Way. There's a Gila's Way website, GILASWAY.com, gilasway.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, on LinkedIn. So yeah, just look up Gila's Way, and Yosh, you can send out the links to people
I
if they
will.
want, but it's pretty straightforward, and that's where it's at. That's where we're at. And we post all the time. There's every day, every week, I give over a weekly Dvar Torah, a talk about the parsha that connects and this and that. Just a few minutes, and everyone's welcome.
Rabbi, thank you again for being here. It means so much to me. Have an easy rest of your fast. And
Thank
thank
you
you,
so much.
Gila, for the difference you're making in so many people's lives. And continue to listen to Living Yosh for stories like Rabbi Hammer just shared. 'Cause every story has meaning. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you. All the best.